Ready. Yay. Okay, so hello everybody. It's me, John Gallagher Portero. I have got a special show for you tonight. Why am I sounding like a late night host? That shouldn't be sounding like a late night host. This is
I feel like you are a late night host.
This is like the most low key thing I've ever done. I think. But we are trudging through each week. We do a certain video about improv long form conversation. Usually I'm joined by John McInnes, but today it is a special occasion. I'm joined by my good friend Ben Macpherson from Nottingham. Hello, Ben.
Hello. Hi. I'm equally as beardy as John, so it's basically the same person.
You can't go wrong with an improviser with a beard. So there's one in every team.
Yeah, most of them nowadays. No one's shaving. It's lockdown, baby.
How are you doing during lockdown? You are not in Bristol, so as we all know, I'm myself and McInnes and Bristol Longform Comedy are based in Bristol, but you're from Nottingham. How's the scene in Nottingham going so far during lockdown?
The improv scene in Nottingham, it's an odd one. Obviously, everything's stopped in terms of like classes, shows, drop-ins, all of that's gone and sadly missed. So I'm involved in a group called Missimp, and so yeah, we've been doing improv for ages, and for the first time ever, we've kind of had to stop our Thursday drop-ins, and these drop-ins have been going since the mid-noughties, so it's like 2003, 2004, I think the drop-ins started every Thursday, and you could always find at least that in Nottingham. So there's this weird hiatus that's sort of, it's like an echoing silence. We haven't gone too much into putting shows online. We are doing some improv virtual drop-ins. So every Thursday we're uploading a little video from people from our community and around the UK, sharing improv exercises you can do yourself at home just to keep your skills fresh. And then we've also got regular sharing of improv videos and podcasts, that kind of thing, to just keep interest and content coming out for our community whilst this lockdown's in effect.
That's pretty good. That's quite a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we're doing good. We've got a great team of people pulling stuff together.
Yeah, that sounds really good. It's really nice to see so much of the British improv community doing so much. People are still talking on groups, and communities are still putting out content. So it's really good. Ben, what's your involvement in Missimp? You mentioned that you are part of Missimp. Tell us a little bit about what you do with Missimp.
So, Missimp is a pretty big community. Nottingham is very blessed that it punches above its weight culturally. For quite a small city, there is a hell of a lot going on. Same's true of improv. In Missimp, I am one of the 5 directors of Missimp, the company. So I am part of the team that works out scheduling, courses, shows, drop-ins. I sign documents with my best handwriting.
You sign documents?
I sign I am a grown-up with an official signature.
Oh, cool.
If they could only see me now, Ma. But yeah, so I involved in quite a bit of the admin for Missimp, as well as also teaching, performing, all the fun stuff as well.
That's so cool. So obviously this show, or again, it doesn't feel like a show. It's just me talking to my friend, which is just really nice and no pressure at all. But we like to, McInnes and I, who sadly couldn't make it today, we like to spend once a week talking about our love, our most cherished of hobbies, long form improv comedy. And I know that you are an avid fan of it, and you're also an incredibly good and gifted performer. How did you first get into long form improv?
So I got into long form improv got into improv at university, technically just before university. This whole story is a lie. So the truth now. I got into improv the summer before I came to university. I started off doing stand-up comedy as only an 18-year-old with an anxiety issue can do. Sort of like, it went fairly well, and blind faith got me through the next 10 to 20 gigs or so. And I was playing a small set at a comedy festival near where I grew up in Suffolk. And one of the shows they had was an improv show. However, the group who should have been there doing it bailed. So I go, sure, I'll join in with this, as they start trying to cobble together a sort of group of comedians to do it. And basically, we got the Whose Line Is It Anyway book, which is a thing, and filled with various games from it. And they used to pick games out of this. Like, quickly we'd read what the game was at the side of the stage, then get on and try to do it. Basically turned into Party Quirks and the Irish drinking song, back to back to back to back to back.
Well, just that, in just going around in a circle, just those games.
Yeah, pretty much.
Classic.
I have no doubt we were awful, but I loved it. And then I started at University of Nottingham, joined the Improv Society there, which had been running for 5 years or so when I joined. And at the Uni Society, there's always the strange thing with how a student society deals with membership versus performance opportunities, and the whole element of training. Because usually I find, or at least when I was there, it was a case that you would have a troupe who were between 6 and 8 people who would get training twice a week, and you'd be preparing shows. There'd be short form shows. You'd have a long form play at the university theatre, and then a show that went up to the Edinburgh Festival. And then there was sort of everyone else who got these once a week drop-ins that were, fun. You did games, basic skills, that kind of thing. And I was doing that and auditioned for the troupe and didn't get in.
Oh, you didn't get in the first time?
No. It's almost as though I don't have an entitlement and God-given spirit to create. Almost. But yeah, so don't get into the university troupe, and I see that these guys are getting their training, and I'm like, well, that's not good enough. And we'd done a few university socials to see the Missimp shows, and they always shouted out their drop-ins and things. So I started going along to those, thinking like, okay, well, if I didn't get in this year, I'll get in next year, and I'll have had all this extra practice. So went along to Missimp and sort of like, oh no, there's loads more here. And at this stage, it's still very short form focused. I think short form is an easier way to access improv. And I think it trains you in so many great skills that you sort of get left behind when you get onto long form. Like, I think you learn scene structure and comedy devices in doing short form. Which usually, with the way improv schooling works, you kind of have those that's somewhat second nature by the time you start doing long form. But I was doing Missimp, getting more involved in this. We're in second year. Second year, they decided to change things up with the university troupe. So instead of just having 8 members who were trained to do sort of long form and short form equally, we had a 3-tier system called gold, silver, and bronze. And you had 4 gold members, 2 silver members, and 2 bronze members. And the gold members were long form specialists. The silver members were long form adjunct. They did long form, but they were also expected to do a bit more short form. And there were bronze, who were just short form, no long form. You can't handle it. And I was fortunate enough to be rated bronze by the university troupe. which once again made me think, well, this isn't good enough. So got more and more involved in Missimp. Basically, my involvement in Missimp is driven entirely by rage, bitterness, and a desire to disprove my my university colleagues.
Yeah, like all improvisers go for it.
Absolutely.
I get that.
Anxiety, hate, and rage.
Yeah.
And it's at this point that Missimp starts doing its first long-form team. We're a group called Fisticuffs. And it's a whole host of different things. Like we had a few members go away and come back with knowledge from different courses. We'd had a few guest teachers come over, and we were sort of playing around with this mixture of different ideas of what we could do with long form. Never really fully committing to one thing to the point where we were putting shows on, just focusing on one type. So at that time we had we tried a few Harolds because you have to.
Mm-hmm.
We had a format we called Unspeakable Acts, where we got the first 2-3 pages of a famous play or film, and we read those pretty much verbatim, including reading out stage directions, that kind of thing. And from those 2 to 3 pages, we would then make up the rest of the film. Oh,
great.
Which was a lot of fun, but also very few films actually introduce their main themes or characters in the first minute to 2 minutes. So we had a version of Jaws that was entirely about women swimming in bikinis and a shark just being nearby. We had a version of Titanic, which was all about the people watching the ship sail away. And it's like, man, I wish I was on the Titanic. And because that was all we had from the first couple of pages. And then we also, then we also did some monoscene work. And I think it was doing that I really started to get an interest in long form improv. And then coupled with a few trips up to the Fringe where I saw Ostentatious a lot and developed enormous improv crushes on every performer there. Improv crushes I still carry to this day. But it was at the time when Ostentatious was a free show. And my first Fringe, I was up at Edinburgh for, it must have been, I think 16 days. I would guess I saw them about 10 times.
Oh, that's super fandom right there.
Yeah. Oh, well. And you know what? I honestly would go back in a heartbeat because it was incredible. Like, it was at the point before you were sort of booking, you'd obviously have to queue up because they were a free show. And I got there an hour beforehand after the first couple of days because I wanted to be sat right at the front.
Yeah.
So, like, from 12:30 to 1:30 in most of August 2012, you could find me stood outside the Counting House in Edinburgh, waiting to go and watch Ostentatious, which is a fun memory. And yeah, I think more influential than I probably care to admit in the stuff I like in improv.
So I guess in terms of long form, Ostentatious was your first gateway into it. Then I guess.
Yeah, and it's the thing that,
or the first team that inspired you, maybe.
Yeah. And we saw Showstopper, who are incredible, and Baby Wants Candy, who were great as well. And I don't know. I think partly the verbosity of Austin attracted me to it. I like historical stories, and I like clever, sort of witty comedy, and there was a good deal of that in Ostentatious, which just drew me to it.
Yeah, that's definitely. I can definitely see that in some of your solo scripted work. Actually, a lot of that witty humor and the very fast paced jokes coming in, and everything sort of coming together at the end very nicely. I can definitely see that in a lot of your stuff.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a big compliment.
Yeah. Well, it's a good discussion. Actually, we could. Okay, so basically, for people who've seen the live stream before with me and McInnes, the structure of the show is we would both speak very roughly about a specific topic that we both enjoy about our time doing improv or our time teaching. And then we would sort of get into a regular conversation, just us talking, and then we would start answering questions from people who've asked questions, either on the live stream or just like the day before or something. But unfortunately, because this isn't a live stream and we didn't ask for any questions, luckily I'll ask you questions and then you can answer them. You're going to be the answerer today, and I will be the question.
I will answer everything. I know it all.
You know, oh, great. Okay, so you're perfect for the job.
Brilliant. Bring it on.
So I guess I guess we can move in, if this is okay with you, Ben. We can move into maybe a topic that you could talk about, which is the transition between improv into scripted work. You could tell us a little bit. Yeah, is that okay? I'm sort of forcing you to talk about all these great things that you're doing. But yeah, you've written, well, from my own perspective, I know that you are. I saw your show, Baron Montrose. Is it Baron Montrose?
Yeah.
Baron Montrose. I saw it a couple of years ago when you did it in Edinburgh, and it was just very, very sharp pun storytelling. A lot of puns were in it. A lot of really great imagery as well. It was very Richard Curtis esque, which was very, very fun to watch. And it was just you. It was just you for 45 minutes entertaining this crowd, and the crowd would, I think, because it was a free Edinburgh Fringe show. It was on the Free Fringe, wasn't it?
Yeah, PBH Free Fringe.
That was it. Yeah, because it was a free Fringe. Obviously, your venues aren't going to be like 100-seater theater. It's going to be like a little tavern or something outside a pub. But when I saw it, I think I saw it twice. You had a huge crowd for it. You had a huge following for it. There was a lot of people that enjoyed it, a lot of laughter, and it was great. So maybe something. What was that transition like? How did you start? Obviously, you were doing stand-up first, but do you think it was an obvious choice to go from improv into writing? What was that transition like?
Yeah, so I wanted to write comedy as long as I wanted to perform it. You know, I never saw myself ever performing other people's material as like a primary thing. I always wanted to be one of these people who made their own stuff. Like growing up, I was lucky to live through sort of the early noughties renaissance of BBC sketch shows. So we had Mitch and Webb, Armstrong and Miller, and then sort of going back later on now, so things like League of Gentlemen that was around at the same kind of time. And you have this, the comedy zeitgeist I was growing up in was full of character and premise-driven comedy that didn't rely on sort of the gubbins of a panel show to sort of grind it forward. It had its own stories, it had its own weight. There was emotion to these characters. It wasn't sort of, 4 to 6 comedians sat in a semicircle with a desk in front of them. Yeah. And I think that really influenced me. And then so that's in my mind about comedy from when I was a kid. And I used to listen to The Goon Show, which is a radio show from the 1950s, written by Spike Milligan. And it's these madcap, sort of very silly, twist on a dime gags, tiny references, and that sort of built my understanding of comedy. And I brought that with me going into improv, obviously. And I was one of those performers who had to be trained to not go for the immediate gag when it came to improv. And it's something I'm still a little bit guilty of. I do like finding a clever bit of wordplay whilst I'm doing it. I'm not actively searching for it anymore.
Mm.
But this relationship with comedy made me admire the craft of writing. And when you write a first draft of a show or a character or a bit or whatever, you are improvising to some extent. So obviously you are making it up, albeit on the page instead of in front of an audience, but you're still making it up. And the improv principles of yes and play to the top of your intelligence so easily convert into turning ideas into scripted material.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then for me, writing became, how do I apply those principles to a theme or an idea? Learning how to do Armandos and deconstructions were instrumental in me developing my ability to construct shows, because I now knew how to take premise, how to take one idea, break it apart, and take all those small bits together into a whole show. So Byron Montrose, the show you saw, is kind of unique as it is one character throughout a whole narrative. My second and third solo shows deal much more with multiple characters exploring one theme. So there was By Myself, which is the idea of independence versus isolation, which was very much inspired by early 20s and sort of coming to terms with the road of a solo performer, and sort of kind of saying goodbye to the idea that someone is going to hand me this. It wasn't so much one of the voice things in the show, but in terms of the mind that was creating it, that taking that theme and pulling it apart, just like you would in an initiation, like a pattern game or an invocation, was sort of very much part of that. And then we did a similar thing with my last show, which has been sort of still in development, and it's going.
Was this Burning Man?
It is, but it might not be for very much longer due to complicated legalese.
And also because of that nasty corona flying around. I think you were going to do a show in Bristol, and
I was.
Yeah, that was a shame when it all went downhill.
When it all went to hell in a handbasket.
There's some really interesting stuff in there. Absolutely true. Yeah, the idea of as a writing process, improv very much is like a first draft of something. Like when you're doing a character study or you're creating a story or something, when you're improvising it or you're devising it, that's definitely a lot of improv there. But the more you draft it, the more you start to pick apart, and you start looking for the little things, like you were saying, the little complicated jokes in the middle of the already obvious jokes. Finding multiple games in your script. That's really interesting stuff. So from improv to writing, that's a really interesting process that you were talking about. What about the other way around? Have you ever had the process of writing something and then to improv?
Yes, forgetting the lines constantly. I have written, learnt, and then forgotten each of my shows, and there has been improv as the performance skill, rather than just improv for its own sake in all of my shows. I had a preview for my current show a little while ago, and I had debuted it at the Nottingham Comedy Festival, and it had gone really well. Unfortunately, I'd forgotten to get it recorded, so I had to go through the whole hoop jumping of, right, can I get audiences again to this? And it was immediately after Christmas, pretty much. It was like 3 weeks after Christmas. And it's just like, I need to have this so I can submit to festivals, otherwise the stuff don't do. So I put off learning the show because I'm like confident. Last time I was great. I don't need to really polish this. And a lot of the characters have fairly complicated dialogue, which I forgot portions of, like a good third of the show.
Oh.
So I knew sort of what the characters' points of view were, and just as you have the top of an improv scene, you get your who, what, where, and your why they feel that way, why they're acting that way. And I just made sure I got that out at the beginning of each character, and then kind of just had to improvise and live inside that skin for a while.
So in the middle of your narrative show, you forgot a third of your script, and then you sort of just improvised. Like, what did you improvise? So if you couldn't get back to the lines of dialogue, you knew where the story was going, but how did you get to that?
Yeah, so this is whilst I was doing the show that's been called Burning Man. And so it is a series of about 14 different character sketches.
Right.
So rather than one ongoing story, I know that, okay, this is the time when I am Noel Salamander. So I know that I've got a giant lizard's head and I hate humanity. Right, okay, I can be that character. And then I have audio tracks that sort of link into who the next character is. So I just need to put that skin on again. Just like if you are playing like a callback in the show, okay, I was Mr. Google Stuff earlier who had the huge moustache and proudly stroked it all the time. If I come on doing this, I will find Mr. Google Stuff again. Right. And it's that same skill. It's finding that character's muscle memory. Unfortunately, obviously, writing the show, the characters were prepared and distinct. Had I been sort of midway through a longer narrative show, I would have been royally screwed. Am I allowed to say screwed?
Yeah, you could say it. You could say absolutely anything. The audience won't mind.
Buttocks.
Oh.
It's this highbrow, witty comedy, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, so I just had to find the skin I was wearing for this character and string it together. And I had an agent along to this. Like, I was really excited. It's like, I might actually get representation off this. That's like, that's the next step. That's really big. And I was chatting to them afterwards, and they sort of said, "That's really good. How far through the development process are you? Your script is really tight." And I sort of had to say to them, "Thank you so much. That's the second time I've performed it, and also I did forget about a third of the script."
Wow.
And also they were like, "That was you unprepared." Oh my god, I'd be so fascinated to see it fully rehearsed, because it was by no means a bad show. It was a really strong show, considering how much of it I'd had to sort of strap together and jury rig on the fly.
Well, there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Well, Ben, the moment you do become famous and you get representation and you do appear on talk shows, you're not going to be allowed to say buttocks and all the nasty words you're going to be saying on this show. So,
hey,
take advantage.
Buttocks to you.
Oh yeah, this show will continue to run on a YouTube channel for Bristol Longform Comedy. Everybody else will move on, but I'll stay here.
Oh, provided you're happy.
It makes me happy, and it's an excuse to talk to friends.
Have you done much beyond improv, like turning into something more fixed, more permanent?
I was actually going to ask you something about that. So I've done stand up before, not as much as I'd like to, but I usually have just done stand up for fun, just if I have a bit. So yeah, if I have just like one bit that I could stretch out for 8 minutes or 5 minutes, I'll do it. But I'm not. It's hard for me to put jokes to paper because it never usually works. I've done sketches by myself as well, which have worked okay because I'm playing a character. But that was the question I was going to ask you. I very much struggle with, and I know a lot of people as well. But putting jokes to paper as an improviser, with stand-up, it's a lonely game. There's no one supporting you. You're there on your own, and your mission is to make the audience laugh.
Yeah.
So when you write a joke, or if you've drafted it for a little while, you write it down, and it's obviously, you've got to just try it out. But my problem and my struggle is I don't like drafting things. I like being in the moment. Like, I feel like the more I draft something, the more I sort of think way too much about it, and then after about 5 minutes of thinking of the joke, I just don't think it's funny anymore.
Yeah.
And I can't hold myself to a joke. I have to be in the moment. Some of my favorite, some of the stand-up, like I'd say half of my stand-up sets have been improvised. At least, the minimum has been half, just because I can't stay on a script. I tried doing it once and I fucked up massively. Like, I massively bombed, because it's not just saying the jokes, it's the delivery. It's and I feel you can be much more genuine if you're improvising it or you're in the moment. I feel more genuine and I feel more confident when I have nothing in front of me, because I know the audience are perceiving this as literally something that I'm just coming up with. But I guess that's for me, that's what stand-up is. Stand-up is not just the jokes; it's the ability to show the audience, to show the audience that what you're saying, you're just coming up with it now. It's the illusion. It's the illusion that you've never, you haven't said this 10 million times at different gigs. So my question is, what drives you to draft things as an improviser? What puts you in your seat and makes you think, I've got to keep going at this?
So, part of it is I have a really strong perfectionist streak when it comes to permanent media. So if I'm writing a story, if I am making a sketch, I will beat myself up and like psychologically torture myself. It is not to a standard I'm happy with.
Oh, see, that's my problem. I think everything I do is perfect, so I don't have to do anything with it. I don't need to draft it.
So that does also have like the other kind of side effect, which is like, oh, this idea is awful. I've half written it. I'm not going to touch it anymore. And a lot of it is just forcing yourself. I find making myself accountable to someone or something else is also really useful. So I mentioned Nottingham Comedy Festival earlier on. Nottingham Comedy Festival happens every November, and what I will do is I'll book my show in usually May or late April, early through to mid-May usually, and that way I have to have it ready by then. So,
right, yeah. So you put yourself a timer. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, well, I do not cancel gigs. I just do not do it. It's the height of rudeness to me to bail on something you promised you'll go to or you're going to perform at.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So it's like, okay, so you've promised Nottingham Comedy Festival you're going to do whatever. You better get it ready, otherwise you can look like an idiot. And invariably, it's usually about 3 days before I'm due to perform it, I will hate myself and think, right now I'm calling up, I'm just going to pull out of it. I can't do it. And then I'll go, oh, but you promised.
Yeah, that's the same with me in stand-up. Like I have been maybe like the day before my set, and this is like a 5-minute set at a non-paid open mic night. This is like nothing. This is, well, I mean, that's no disrespect to the people in charge. It's just it's very low key. It's just, it's nobody's paying to get in, basically, is what I'm saying. But I still will feel super nervous. Like I'll be there and I'll be like, oh man, I can't, I don't want to do it. I want to bail, but then that forces me to go through it. But one thing that really does force me is the idea that I don't have any material. Like the last stand-up gig I did, I only had an idea of the bit. I didn't know what I was going to say. I just knew like what you was like, basically what you were saying in terms of characters. When you go from the scripted stuff to improv, you sort of know the character and you do your who, what, where, and then you get into the character.
Yeah.
So that drives me, the imperfection of it, and but that goes with that goes with it drives my confidence as well. The ability that I don't know what's going to happen, but that pushes me forward. That pushes me into going. It doesn't matter. I shouldn't have any stakes in this.
Yeah. I think there is that horrible, beautiful point in like desperation and anxiety where you get this sense of, well, it's got to be done. It doesn't have to be done well, but it's got to be done.
Yeah.
It very badly was how I did most of my uni degree. It's like, what's that? Essay has to be in 4 days. How much have I done? Well, I've written an introduction. Okay.
That's right.
And submit.
Yeah, that would literally do an all-nighter before the essay's supposed to be submitted in.
Kind of, yeah.
Yep, that's what I did.
3 in the morning? Do you mean the scholars' hour? Yes.
What's that? I should be revising for my exam tomorrow. Well, I've got an improv gig. I'll do that first.
Yeah, fine. Yeah. That was so bad. Like, I went to university and I studied classics, so ancient Greece, ancient Rome, history, culture, art, architecture, everything. I love it. And classics is a marvelous subject. It teaches you so many things, primarily how to become a classics teacher in order to propagate this beautiful pyramid scheme. Literally, if you are teaching Egyptology.
Are there classics teachers still going to this day?
Yeah.
Is there really?
Oh yeah. Trust me, I'm aware of the career options.
Just
in the back pocket there.
I remember in my school that I went to like a public Catholic school, but it was supposed to. They were like they were trying to make it look as if it was private.
Okay.
So I know that there was Latin. There was Latin in the school, but my set didn't do Latin because we were the ding dongs of the school. We were like the lower set, so we didn't have to do it. Thank goodness.
Extra PE.
Extra. It's like extra breaks. Just take a break. Just take another break.
Do you think we should maybe finish off the English before you start the Latin?
Oh no, they weren't even through that first. We still just had to obey what teachers were saying. How to eat in the cafeteria. Oh yeah. But yeah, that always sort of came to mind. It's like, is Latin still a thing?
No, it's not. It's a beautiful corner of scholarly study, which's got so much history behind it. And like, if you're studying linguistics, and I'm a language nerd, I etymology, history of like how phrasing and stuff develops, love it. Entirely impractical and mostly useless. But God, it's interesting to study. And so I came to uni and did a degree. I thought, this is going to be really interesting and nothing to do with what I want to do for a career. And I've entirely forgotten why I'm talking about classics.
We just went through a side door. Well, let's get back into the idea of drafting, like drafting scripted work, and how an improviser's brain can sit down and be like, let's just write this down. And I guess from what you're saying, it's about dedicating yourself to having a time, having a schedule, right?
Yeah.
Having a gig, and being able to prepare yourself because you don't want to fuck up. You want to do the best show that you can.
Yeah. I have a wonderfully powerful ego, and I desire highly to be thought well of. I want people to think that is Ben Macpherson. He is a funny, competent man. and that ego-driven kind of fear, really, sort of just I find really useful for focusing at those like critical key moments. Also, I have a wonderful sense of procrastination as well. I don't put off anything until my ego gets threatened, and then we'll work at it like there's no tomorrow.
Do you have the same dedication when you're doing improv? So like if you're doing like a show, do you still aspire to perfection in an improv show?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's something I am learning to let go of, because as soon as you try to achieve perfection in improv, you are worried. You are going into a show already in your head. You've already made the game so much harder. And I'm very lucky that I've got a great team I improvise up with here called the Vox Pops. We're an Armando team, and in there, I feel fully able to just relax, because we practice often enough. We know each other. We know how each other plays. That is just like, hey, get up there. The only thing I really need to worry about is spotting something to bring in at the end to make it look like it had a coherent overall structure. And it's like, I know how to blow up the balloon. I just need to keep hold of the little end bit so it doesn't blow off around the room. And I think, again, part of my sense there is a desire to have. I have a perfectionist approach to doing a show like that. In how I envision the show, because I'm a director as well as performer with Vox Pops. It is a cohesive sketch show, and I want things to come back. Even though the worlds that we create are individual, it ought to have this button that it comes back to, because then you can sort of go, and here is the thing, as opposed to, right, I've got these. This is yours, and this is yours, and have this as well. And I like completeness in improv.
Well, let me ask you this. There's it seems to be okay. So the philosophy that Bristol Longform Comedy take is that we do long form comedy, we do improv comedy, and the reason we do that, the reason we do that is because we enjoy doing it, but also it goes hand in hand with comedy in general. The idea that you can use improv to use for writing, sketch writing, stand up. You can use a lot of the things that you learn from Bristol Longform Comedy into all types of comedy, character comedy, all kinds of stuff. And they're in comparison to other improv schools, it's much more note heavy. It's much, I guess, a little bit more loose in its teaching style. I want to say stricter. I don't think that's the right word, but we definitely nip things in the bud. And I personally, as a teacher there, like I'm proud that I can do that. I'm proud that I'm sort of someone who can I want to be impressed. I want to see a scene, and I want to have these students make me laugh, and I've been to classes before, and I've been to other schools that they're a bit more lenient, and you know what, I totally get it, because improv to a lot of people is a very free form. It's a very devised. It's a very, everybody is, we should all take care of each other, and it's a lot more. I guess in a way a bit more hippie, which is really great for people who don't want to be performers, but instead use improv as a life lesson rather than a performer's lesson. But that's the thing with BLC; it's more of a performer's lesson. We do this because we want to be performers. What's your approach to that? Because if you're a perfectionist, I guess you will lean more towards a perfectionist approach to teaching. And you teach, don't you? I
do.
What's your teaching opinion? What's your teacher opinion on that?
So, I am a big fan of letting the lesson reveal itself. So
Okay.
I'll have a syllabus that we talk through. So Missimp has got a 4-tier improv course, and that is I see that as like that is the landscape we are going to be going through, as opposed to the road we are traveling. And when I get things entirely my own way, because obviously if you're doing collegiate teaching, you have to balance things a bit more. But I am very much a case of, hey, by the end of this lesson, I want you to know these things. These are how I think we're going to get there. Let's see and go off. But if you do a scene and suddenly, you've got this incredible moment when you're talking about holding tension and making a dramatic choice over like a comedic choice, I will happily go off and talk for sort of 10-15 minutes about how you read the energy in a room, how do you feel the energy of a piece, to see whether you go through that, even if the lesson might have been how do you find like change in it in a scene, how do you find transition. So I'll happily take a tangent off there and give the lesson that the class is leaning towards, rather than the lesson that is necessarily on the lesson plan.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so like for example, because we follow a syllabus, so there's so each course has a specific. It's a 4-week course where each day is a specific subject and a specific theme. So for your class, it's more. So walk me through that then. Like if you're doing like a beginner's class, you'd find what the theme is during the class itself.
So we would go in with a theme,
Yeah.
but if something else adjacent to that theme comes up, I will nurture that as well as the core lesson.
Oh, I see. Okay, so like any extra questions or any other things that people might want answered, or
Yeah, I think it's really easy in improv to get, especially if you have a very prolific school, or a very set syllabus. It's like, this week you learn the yes, next week you learn the and, week after that you will learn the characters, week after that you will learn basic object work and how not to face the audience in a way that means you cannot be seen. I think you kind of get this, it becomes a digital process. It is either on or off, right or wrong. You've either learned the lesson or you've not learned the lesson. But that's not how brains work.
Hmm.
And I mean, I'm sure you found it in doing workshops. And I mean, we've done 3 or 4 different workshops together, and sometimes the workshop teacher, just you vibe with what they're saying, and it's like, yeah, this is great. This is revolutionized improv. This is how I'm going to do all of my improv from now on. And 4 weeks later, you've taken on a little bit of it, but you've actually gone onto that thing that your own rhythm has found.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want, when I teach, I aspire to find the rhythm each person in the class is working with, and kind of like the class rhythm itself, and teach to that, rather than the now we learn yes, now we learn and, now we learn character.
Yeah. That's a nice approach. That's sort of, it feels like very slap in the middle between the two that I was talking about, the very more um, sort of hippie-ish approach to the more conservative approach, I guess, in a way. That feels very neutral, which is really nice. Actually, that's a really nice way of approaching improv classes. Do you What about your coaching background? Have you ever coached teams before? I think you mentioned that you were a director of Vox Pops.
Yeah. So my coaching, I have done coaching with Missimp and also at the Notts University. So coaching style wise, I again, the perfectionist in me, I would love to be that, have you learned from Ben Macpherson? He drops profound truth bombs and revolutionizes my improv.
Is that what you're known for in
no,
Edinburgh,
not
in
at all.
Nottingham?
Probably because I worry too much about that and not actually about improving people's improv. And I'm working on that. That's where I need to develop. But in terms of a coach, I like to. So I want to be reflective with coaching. I think you can get some coaches who are like, right, okay, this is my understanding of improv. You've brought me in as a coach because you want to get closer to how I understand improv. And I think you also get coaches who are very much like, okay, so I'm just going to give each of you individual little notes and we're just going to have a good time. And I like that halfway point. I like, okay, these are your strengths. You're doing this really nicely. Have you thought? So I like. I don't want to be the guru in the classroom. I don't want my way to be the absolute way. I want this to be a discussion. And okay, I probably have a bit more experience than you if you've got me in to coach you. I probably have more of a structural understanding and approach to improv, and I'll probably see the beats, the elements, the scaffolding of your show quite well. As I think that's where my kind of strengths, in terms of like reading, analysing improv, I think that's where my mind goes more. However, I am very aware that I would be a less useful coach if you wanted something more organic, more fluid. I can do that improv, but that's kind of one of those ones where it's like you get off stage and you go, okay, cool, that was really good. How did I do that?
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Each teacher or coach has their own specific style, and some of them don't do the best. And that's a good point about coaches and teachers in general. That's a good point to say to students. It's like they're not gurus. They're not like the end all of improv. It is their perspective on, and they're just giving you notes on what their experience is. That's why it's good to sort of go into different classes and not argue with teachers. Just take the stuff that you enjoy. That's why I think I love the coaches. Some coaches here in Bristol are students. I love being coached by like an audience member. I think it's only happened once or twice, but having an audience member or a mate just come in and tell us what they think of a show. That's good coaching in itself, because you're getting feedback from an audience member. That's the number one person you're sort of doing the show for.
This is your target market. Give
them
what they want.
Basically, it's a good lesson in, is what we're saying obvious? Is what we're saying intelligible? Is what we're doing, does it all make sense? And if it doesn't, then we have to do it again. If it does, then we're bringing in an audience member. We're letting an audience member into our world and into the scene. And obviously, a coach with experience can just give you little tips and tricks that you might not have heard of before, and it's nice to get that sort of stuff.
Well, the thing I find interesting about improv teaching is that institutions have their own syllabuses, but I think you get a richer understanding of improv from doing 8 different guest teachers classes than you will one teacher's 8-week class.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And I have this approach and understanding of improv learning, which is as much as we kind of have like an oral history, because we don't have like a codified history of improv, we've also got an oral syllabus that exists in thousands of notebooks. In fact, so here is part of the world's improv syllabus. And it is in your notebooks, and it is in the notebooks of Susan Messing and Amy Poehler and Steve Rowe and Carrie Ad Lloyd and Paul Foxcroft and all these improvisers, because we're all borrowing bits from each other. And if we're good and we behave well, then we attribute back to them. But also, if we get that from someone who we don't know or who doesn't attribute to the person who told it to them, then I guess it kind of just belongs to the improv community, wherever that is, and whoever uses it next is like the next owner. It's like, instead of Dead Men's Tues, it's like Dead Men's Improv Exercises. And going back to the idea of gurus that we talked about earlier, there's stock in who you learn from now. It's like, oh, this person learned from Dell. This person studied with Keith Johnston. Whoop-de-doo. Good for you. Hope you had a great time. Does that matter?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I guess it's, for me, I pretty much all my teaching books have all my notebooks even are just things I'm stealing from everybody else. But as long as you mention it to students that you've got it from this person, then I guess it's okay. I'm currently in the process of trying to come up with my own exercises, but I'm
right.
difficult. It's just like I'm getting to the point where it's like it's got to be like in the middle. It hasn't got to be so out there that it's complicated, and it can't be so obvious and so simple that it doesn't. It's pretty much just another exercise in disguise. But that's what I found. All the really good exercises are so simple, but I'm trying to find that sweet spot, and I haven't found any yet.
Yeah.
But it's we'll find out. We'll find something. I'll find something.
I get that. I find when I'm coming up with exercises, I have the result in my mind. I have my perfect end, my platonic ideal improv exercise, and it's like, so we're now going to do this exercise, and it's going to be about this, and I'm saying this all in my head, and then you try to find the route into it, and it's like, okay, so I need to get you to respond emotionally, but also hold poise and stance whilst you do it. And it's like, I physically don't know how to construct all these bits. I know the dome has got to go up on the cathedral, but how do I build it from the bottom up? Do I put the top keystone in and then
I know it's tough. It's real tough. I haven't found anything yet, but I've been really enjoying just doing a whole bunch of warm-ups. I think I approach teaching the same way I do approach stand-up a little bit. Is like I have something in place, but I have like a plan in mind. I just don't want to like do it word for word. I want to go in just confident of my abilities and just go all in and be myself. I don't want to try and be anybody. I don't want to be like this huge, big, ridiculous character with jokes that I've never told before. I want to just go in as myself, and that usually is just me just striding in and being like, all right, let's do this. It just looks so pissed off, but it's how I'm feeling. But I definitely try, like you said, like halfway through your class, you start to experience what the theme of the class is and how everybody's responding to certain things, and you do change, right? Especially in drop-ins, you'll have an idea for the class that you're going to do something on listening, but then you realize, like, I don't know, like 10 minutes in when you're doing warm-ups that maybe like the class isn't as experienced as you thought it was, and then you just change completely. Then you just do, all right, let's skip listening and let's just do some agreement exercises. It's all good, and it's if you're happy about it, if you have a nice, good, positive attitude to it, everybody's going to take that. Everybody's going to use that and be happy as well. So there we go. Yeah, that's my number one tip on teaching, folks. Be happy.
A good attitude to have.
I don't care what you're going through in your personal life. You better come into this class and be fucking happy, or you're ruining improv for everybody else.
Fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it. Exactly. But I think Del Close said that in Truth and Comedy.
Yeah.
I think it was definitely in the
Well,
blood.
I'll have you know that I learnt from someone who learnt from Del Close, so I am quite a gifted improv teacher.
I like how that's the thing. Like I have had teachers before be like, "Oh, I learned from Dal, and oh, I did this class with Dal," and now we're at the stage where we're going to be like, "Hey, I learned from someone who learned from Dal." It's just going to be an ongoing Russian doll situation.
Yeah, as though you are close to this miraculous fountain. Like, oh
Yeah.
well, I didn't actually mine the gold from the gold vein, but I am wearing the necklace that was mined from the gold, and it's like, get over yourself.
I used to live with a guy who was an extra in
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and
He
he
was
had
in the
coffee with
classroom
Dal.
scene.
He was in the classroom scene, yeah.
He,
So I guess you could say I'm pretty like I've got good improv chops.
yeah, yeah. I've heard of the Compass people.
The Compass people, absolutely. I just want to make a slight observation that we have not been doing exactly. We have not been going at the structure that I previously said we were going to do.
I'm sorry.
And no, Ben, I'm sorry. I'm steering this ship a different in a different direction, and I apologize to the audience at home for not having structure. But with that being said, let's. It's kind of nice. I've kind of like this sort of approach of just like chatting, like we're mates. So it's like
Great.
fuck you, audience members. There's not gonna be any. There's not gonna be any.
Who do you think you are?
Yeah, fuck you. This is my show. Uh, but talking of no direction, talking of improvising, even what's definitely been your favorite class to teach? What's been a subject, a theme that you enjoy teaching?
That's tough. There are so many great subjects. I really like so every so often the Vox Pops team I'm in will have a play with the Vox Pops day, and we do an introduction to doing monologues, and then we do, okay, this is how you take stuff out of a monologue, and this is how you do a premise initiation, and then we're just going to do some Armandos. And it's a 3 to 4 hour workshop we do, and it's brilliant. Partly because it's a team I'm playing with, so the team also do the workshop as well as anyone who wants to come play with us. It's designed to sort of try to take down the walls between teams.
Right.
Because I think if you get on a house team, or if you're one of the privileged cast members, if you get gold membership in the University of Nottingham Improv Society, then you tend to get a little bit raised up on a pedestal. There starts to be some divides coming down, and doing stuff like this, it works to take those down, and it's much more community driven. So in terms of the psychology of that, and the community approach, that's something I'm really passionate about, because so I have a quote from BioShock in my head at the moment.
Okay.
There's this beautiful line. It's so if you've not played BioShock before, it is a sort of thriller, horror, first-person shooter exploration game. And in the first game, you descend into this massive underwater city called Rapture. Rapture?
Atlantis.
Yes, it's like an underwater Atlantis thing. And you go down into the city, and as you go down, the lore of the game is that you have an industrialist in America who decided, right, no, government interferes too much. The threat of communism is massive. Let's leave it all behind. It's sort of like that. It's a libertarian paradise, basically. And as you go in, there's this massive banner that says "No gods or kings, only men." And I want improv workshops to be no gods or kings, only improvisers.
Libertarian paradise.
Libertarian improv.
Yeah.
You have the right to yes and.
Yeah.
The government
you're
should
out.
not take that away from you.
Yeah, that's a nice approach for it. Yeah, that's nice that the other groups can come together. That's an interesting thing.
Well, I don't know how you find it. Obviously, in Bristol, you've got fantastic institutions like you've got the Bit, you've got your own group, you've got everything there. That's it kind of, they all have their schemes and their pillars, and like stuff gets fed up them, and you build this tower based on success and the people you bring in, but it gets really easy for the people on floor 3 or 4 of the tower to lose contact with people who are coming on the ground floor. And
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that's sad, because you learn as much from those people who, whether you are sort of looking up at floor 3 or 4, as you do from the people who've not, like, if this is your first improv workshop, I love being the guy who does like the first someone's first ever improv scene with them, because it's like, oh my god, I'm going to learn so much from playing with this person. It's a dialogue, it's not a monologue.
absolutely. Yeah, I love doing drop-ins with new people, completely new people. It's ego, isn't it? It's ego. It's like when people are at the top of the banister, you just at the banister, the top of the
at the top of the banister.
There's
I'm
I'm picturing sort of like a hacienda with like a little balcony at the top of a pillar. It looks real nice, and that's where that's where you go if you've got an ego, and it's it's weird. It's really strange where you're looking up from that, when you're looking down from there, because it's like, or one way that I think is a good way of dealing with that is by giving by giving people a chance to be in teams, like encouraging people to be in teams and giving them the space to perform.
Yeah.
So that, it's like, if you're completely new, you have the opportunity to jump in jams, or you have the opportunity to start a team, get a coach, and to book gigs and to get given gigs. And that's especially what we try and do at Bristol Longform Comedy. Is like when you get to the top tier at 401, it doesn't stop there. It's not like you're finished, you've given us your money, bye. You've learned everything. No, we try and actively encourage people to give them a coach and to start a team and be a team and rehearse every week, hang out with each other, and you get given gigs. We give people gigs. You're performing at this night that we have. We want people to perform. The only way. It's the only way to stop thinking that you're better than people. McInnes has a really good one-man show called Mac and Me, where he performs. It's just him, and then anybody from the audience can jump up and perform with him. And then at any point, somebody from the audience can jump in and tag the other audience member out and perform a different scene with McInnes. Basically, it's McInnes playing with everybody, doing random scenes with everybody. And it's a good show because he's a great improviser and a great comedian, but also you're practicing with people all the time. You're in jams as well. You're working with people that you've never played before, and you're a better improviser for it.
Absolutely.
You learn patience. You learn to listen to people. And if they're not, if they don't know what's happening, if they don't know what's going on, it's your responsibility to support that.
Yeah,
That's the best way of doing it. So play with people and give people the opportunity to perform.
I really want to do a me plus one type show. I've got a title for it already, which I'm thinking is Ben Pals, like pen pals, but Ben.
Ben Pals, love it. That sounds like a children's TV show where all the characters are CGI dogs. Ben Pals, I love it. I love it.
I'm also thinking the log line for the show, like pen pals, but Ben. I kind of like that. And it's basically a way for me to invite improv crushes in like one to three improv crushes up to do a show.
Well, that's the whole of Ostentatious then.
Pretty much. Just basically, I will be wearing Regency garb.
And they won't. They'll just be there in their random clothes.
I'll
be
just
like, what?
sit there in a frock coat. Great, cool. Hey guys. Oh no, this is the only thing I care about you for.
Yeah, I thought we were doing Ben Pals today. No, we're doing Ostentatious.
With Ben Macpherson.
Put your clothes on. Put your gloves on. Go on.
Where's your petticoat? Yeah. I've never done anything. I've done like one-off scenes with people before, but the idea of getting to adapt it and constantly change it, I think is really exciting.
Yeah.
Last Nottingham Comedy Festival, we had Neil Curran out from Dublin doing Neil Plus One, which was just stunning and incredible. And I find it so interesting seeing how a performer will shift and adapt. And it's not like putting on a new mask or anything. It's just like it's this really respectful sort of like. It's not steering, but it's like it's like Pacific Rim when you're piloting one of the big robots and you're sort of there. I think it's drifting, and they're drifting together, and it's like, yeah, we're both in sync with this, and you can tell. Okay, no, this guy knows how the big robot works, but also this big robot doesn't work without this person.
Right.
Neil gets someone from the audience who's never done improv before, preferably, and gets something. And it's just like that's mind-blowingly beautiful. Yeah. So excited about stuff like that.
That's so cool. Well, that was something I wanted to ask you when we were talking about your scripted to improv work, which was you do a lot of solo scripted work with Byron Montrose and Burning Man. What's your take on solo improv? Would you approach it the same way, or as a scripted solo piece?
Yeah. So
Ben and Pals, basically.
Yeah.
Pitch me Ben and Pals.
Ben and Pals. So the first solo improv I saw was actually yours, One Boardman.
Cool.
That was my introduction to solo improv. And I thought that was incredible. It's such a beautiful device to have, because obviously you can just see a series of improvised monologues where it's just one character sharing their point of view, but that can get a little bit stale. And I would love to do full-on solo improv, but I think at the moment I rely too much on my scene partner. Like I'm good at receiving and turning something into comedy. I think I do not have enough in the engine at the moment to do solo improv. That being said, I do know what my solo improv project would be.
Oh yeah.
And this is stupidly ambitious and a sign of the egotistic perfectionism. I want to do one-man improvised Shakespeare.
That's interesting. Yeah. How would you do that? Like playing all the characters, or just
Yep.
or like soliloquies, or
Nope. All the characters. I will be
wow.
everyone. I have no idea how I would do this. It's probably something I should work on whilst I am
While you're
in
here,
lockdown.
yeah,
And I have, again, I have this perfect image in my head. I have my platonic ideal of Ben Macpherson's solo improv, and I can never find the way into it. And it's the perfectionism again. It drives
yeah.
me crazy. I wish I wasn't a perfectionist. I'd probably do a hell of a lot more.
Could you find a neutral ground between a solo improv work and your solo scripted work?
Yeah, I think so. I I like the idea that I don't know if you've ever been to like an evening with type events. So I've been to like an evening with Stephen Fry at the Royal Albert Hall, and he read a couple of bits he'd written, but then the rest of it was him just talking, and it was himself. And I'd be interested to see if there's like an improv balance between that. So rather than telling life stories, improvising stories, going into fact. Because obviously every time you tell something scripted, you'll find something new in it. There's always details like the way you deliver something, the way you stumble over a word, the slightly too long pause as you remember a line.
Yeah.
There's so much in that, and in the human grey spaces of scripted work that would be interesting to explore.
Well, what you were saying about the scripted stuff, about when you're doing a show and then you go off book because you've forgotten a third of the show, that in itself, I can imagine you doing very well with that, and you got praise for it as well. I can
Yeah.
imagine you doing really well with that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
This whole entire video has just been a plot to try and get you to do solo improv, Ben.
Has it?
Yeah.
Okay. You tell me what my solo improv show is going to be.
All right. Here we go. So I'm thinking of Ben, and I'm thinking of Pals, and I'm thinking that maybe Ben and Pals is something that you could work on. I've got a friend who does CGI animation. It might not be with CGI dogs because Paw Patrol is a real thing, but we could find another group of animals that get this show on the road.
Cool. And I voice all of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a live show. You voice all the animals. It'll be on prime time children's hour, which is like 8 a.m.
Great. Definitely the hour I'm at my best at.
Yeah, just after Milkshake on Channel 5. You're Channel 5, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
I
that's
couldn't
fair.
I couldn't get you a better
Will
network.
end up. If it gets British TV properly, regularly, it will be a Channel 5 thing, I think.
Maybe.
Have you so I pitched so I applied for a couple of jobs at the BBC a while ago, and they also do like pitch us a show type thing, and I was going through and I'm sending in a couple of ideas that I've had, and one of the things they say very clearly is please do not pitch us improvisation shows. Showstopper and ostentatious are rare and unique things. They are not something we're interested in capturing. It's like, oh my god, that's incredible! Just the rampant hate. It's or just arts elitism and comedy elitism. It's
Well, it's a good thing that it's improv is available online. There are improv shows that are available. I mean, Middleditch and Schwartz is doing very well on Netflix. But a lot of people forget that TJ and Dave is on Vimeo.
Yeah,
the whole series is on Vimeo, which is great.
I've got a season pass for it. It's a great series.
Yeah, it's really, really good. I guess in the sense the UCB show is kind of a Harold, their sketch show. It's not improvised, but I mean, it came from an improvised idea. I guess that makes if that counts. No, it doesn't count. I'm just plugging. I was told to plug it, so I'm doing it.
Plug.
Plug. Cool. Well, I think we'll call it there, Ben. I think that
Yeah,
was yeah, I think so. I think like the
we've been talking for. I've completely lost track of time.
like an hour and 20 minutes.
Oh my god.
Yeah, we've been talking for a long time, and usually the live streams that myself and McInnes do usually go on for like an hour 20, hour 30 or something. So
Perfect.
um, yeah, so we lost sight of the structure, but I think we got some really interesting conversations in, and we were able to answer some questions, and it's been really nice. It's been
Yeah,
really nice chatting.
this has been lovely. I like to think that we have abandoned your structure but taken on my uh, class structure. We found interesting tangents and we found the rhythm of the conversation.
Hey, I'm just glad that BioShock made an entry in this conversation.
Very important. If it
That
doesn't
video
get its rep, then I get sued.
exactly. So I'm just glad that was able to get in. I don't care about anything else. Um, thank you so much, Ben, for being part of
Yeah.
it. Is there anything that you'd like to plug at all?
Um, so at the moment, all of my shows don't exist because the world is on fire. I guess the easiest way, if you want to find me online, I'm on Twitter at Ben Macpherson1, or I am on Facebook, Ben M Comedy. Yeah, those are probably the two easiest ways to find me. Say hi, book me for a partially planned but mostly inspired and directed by yourselves workshop. Oh, I
Nice.
hate myself doing that. That's vile. Each hope.
Love it. I love it. We will be back. Bristol Longform Comedy will be back hopefully next week. We'll do another live stream. We'll do another video talking all things Longform improv comedy. Thank you very much. I've been John Gallagher Portero, Ben Macpherson on the show, and we will see you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.